So what if the exact reason you don't have what you desperately want right now is like precisely because you are trying so incredibly hard to get it?
Oh, man. That is a heavy thought right out of the gate.
Right. But just, think about that for a second. I mean, we all operate on this fundamental assumption that achieving something monumental requires this uh, absolute, relentless physical effort.
Yeah, totally. It's like pure mechanics, action and reaction.
Exactly. You want to move a boulder, you calculate the weight, you wedge a lever underneath it, and you just push until your muscles give out.
We are conditioned from the very dawn of our lives to believe that sheer visible force is what guarantees an outcome.
Yep, the whole blood, sweat, and tears narrative.
Exactly. I mean, we actually find immense comfort in the visibility of our own exhaustion.
Oh, absolutely, because it feels like proof. It feels like, well, I'm exhausted, so I must be doing enough.
Right. But then you step into the realm of really profound, radical life shifts.
The big stuff. The stuff that alters the entire trajectory of your existence.
Yes. And suddenly, that mechanical lever just completely snaps in half.
It's terrifying when that happens.
It really is. You find yourself in this landscape where relentless pushing just leaves you broken. You're staring at a stone that hasn't budged a fraction of an inch.
And I want to talk directly to you, the listener, for a moment here, because, well, we've all been in this universally understood scenario.
Every single one of us.
You are trying to materialize a massive shift. Maybe you're seeking this elevated professional path, or a profound romantic connection, or just a boundless fortune.
Something massive.
Yeah. So what do? You put out this endless tide of effort. You send out a vast constellation of
And
application.
networking, you're hustling.
Right. Attempting to spark countless connections, working yourself until absolute physical and mental collapse.
Because you're doing exactly what the physical world demands of you. You're playing rigidly by the rules of action.
Right. The rules we were all taught.
Exactly. You assume that if you just bleed enough effort into the soil, like eventually something has to grow.
But despite this immense expenditure of energy, reality just answers with absolute terrifying silence.
Which is the hardest part. The silence.
It really is. The external world appears entirely stagnant. And in some cases, it maybe even feels like it's actively regressing.
Yeah, like you're somehow going backward despite running at full speed.
Exactly. You're caught in this agonizing cycle of confusion, just wondering why your relentless actions are yielding nothing but a hollow void.
It is a totally devastating place to be. I mean, it breaks the fundamental promise that society taught us, right?
But the promise that struggle equals success.
Exactly. When the results don't manifest, our natural human inclination is to assume the fault lies in our lack of effort.
We think, we just aren't pushing hard enough.
Right. We assume we're the problem, so what do? We push harder,
Right.
we burn out, we spiral into despair.
Which brings us to the core mission for our exploration today.
Yes, the real meat of the discussion.
We are going to bypass the physical illusions of effort entirely today. We're looking at the underlying mechanics of materializing your desired reality.
Stripping away all the esoteric fluff.
Exactly, no flush. Just looking at how perception, neurobiology, and the fundamental laws of cause and effect actually dictate what you experience.
Because the overarching force of reality, whatever you conceive that to be, it does not respond to your physical exhaustion.
That is such a crucial point. Exhaustion is not a currency you can trade for success.
It's really not. Reality responds to your baseline state of being, not your sweat.
Let's unpack that, because I want to challenge this right out of the gate.
Mm-hmm.
We are essentially saying that the relentless pursuit of external change is actually the trap.
It is a trap, yeah.
But when someone is frantically trying to fix their life, how exactly does that act of fixing become the mechanism that destroys their progress?
To understand this, we have to look at the psychological and physiological engine that's driving all that frantic effort.
Okay, break that down for us.
Well, when we are frantically trying to force the outside world to change, we're operating from a core, undeniable belief that something vital is missing.
We feel empty. We feel threatened.
Exactly. Our nervous system is in a state of full-blown alarm. We are internally broadcasting a state of lack.
We're practically vibrating with it.
Right. And reality, which operates as a perfect feedback loop, simply mirrors that baseline state back to us.
So it's kind of like an algorithm on social media.
Oh, that's a perfect way to look at it.
Yeah, because the universe doesn't judge the video you're watching, right? It just sees you fixated on it and says, here's more of that.
Precisely. It just feeds you more of what you engage with.
If your internal state is fixated on the feeling of lacking a career or lacking money or lacking love, the algorithm of reality just serves you an endless feed of lack.
That is a brilliant way to frame it. I mean, the algorithm does not interpret your desire. It interprets your engagement.
It doesn't care that you want the money. It just sees you stressing about not having it.
Exactly. If you engage with the world through the lens of desperation, well, desperation is the data you feed the system.
Which I guess leads us into a really crucial phase of this whole process.
The void.
Yes, the void. When you attempt to materialize a completely new reality, there's almost always this period of profound darkness.
A transitional phase where absolutely nothing seems to change.
Right. The skies remain gray, the soil remains entirely barren, and the horizon is just, completely empty.
And this is exactly where the overwhelming majority of people just surrender.
Because it feels pointless.
Right. They look at the darkness, they accept it as the absolute truth, and they fold. They say, well, the algorithm is broken, this isn't working.
But the argument we're exploring here is that this darkness is completely illusionary.
It is a total illusion.
And I have to be honest, illusionary is a really tough word to swallow for a lot of people.
Oh, for sure. It sounds dismissive.
It does. Because to the person standing in it, that darkness feels incredibly real. I mean, if your bank account is a barren wasteland, that doesn't feel like a trick of the light.
No, it feels like a crisis.
It feels like a hard, cold, terrifying fact.
Of course it feels real. I mean, the human sensory apparatus is explicitly designed to interpret physical density and immediate threat.
It's our biology.
Right. But we have to zoom out and look at the actual mechanics of perception. The physical realm, everything we can touch, measure, and verify in this exact second is merely a microscopic fragment of the vast spectrum of what is actually possible.
So our view is just incredibly narrow.
Extremely narrow. We perceive this reality through a highly filtered, incredibly limited biological lens.
We are essentially looking through this tiny, dust-covered keyhole and just assuming we have a comprehensive understanding of the entire architecture of the house.
That's exactly it. And reality operates by presenting you with a stagnant picture specifically to test your internal baseline.
Wait, it's a test.
Essentially, yes. If the external world succeeds in convincing your subconscious mind that things are hopeless, then your subconscious accepts that hopeless state as the permanent blueprint.
Wow.
And because your subconscious filtering networks dictate your behavior, your micro expressions, and the opportunities you notice, it just perpetuates that exact stagnant cycle.
So the entire game is just a psychological test of endurance.
Yeah.
Reality shows you an empty room.
Yes.
And if you agree that the room is empty, and it will, always be empty, your brain literally stops looking for doors. It just stays empty forever.
You've got it. The true power lies entirely on the internal plane, completely independent of the external evidence.
Even when the external evidence is overwhelming.
Especially then. Consider a scenario representing absolute, irreversible finality. Imagine some historical leader facing an overwhelming, inescapable siege.
Like a metaphorical sealed tomb for all their ambitions.
Exactly. The collective consciousness, the advisors, the soldiers, the normal people standing around, they look at the visible evidence.
They run the numbers.
Right. They calculate the odds, they weep, and they just accept the finality. They agree with an empty room.
Because according to every single physical metric, it is over. The rock is rolled across the door. The math says they lose.
Exactly. The rational mind calculates destruction. But a master, someone entirely unified with a broader understanding of possibility, approaches this void very differently.
What do they do differently?
Instead of weeping and instead of frantically pushing against the unmovable stone, this individual expresses profound, overwhelming gratitude.
Wait, before the stone moves?
Yes. Before any visible change occurs.
That is wild.
They internally generate the feeling of having already survived, having already triumphed. They express thanks for the manifestation that has absolutely zero physical evidence of existing yet.
Okay, I have to push back hard here.
I figured you might.
Because this is exactly where I think the listener trips up. And frankly, where a lot of this philosophy crosses into what sounds a lot like toxic positivity.
I hear that criticism a lot.
Right. Because it's one thing to say, hey, maintain a good attitude. It is entirely another to stand in front of a metaphorical sealed tomb of your ambitions, Maybe your life's work just collapsed, or you're facing total financial ruin and just feel gratitude.
It sounds completely unhinged.
It does. It feels like writing a thank you note for a boundless fortune while staring at a completely empty vault.
Right.
How does a rational human being genuinely feel gratitude in the face of what looks like absolute ruin without slipping into pure, unadulterated delusion?
That is the essential hurdle, and the distinction between cognitive delusion and intentional baseline shifting is critical here.
So what's the difference?
Well, delusion is a state of cognitive dissonance. You are lying to yourself, plastering this fake smile over your face, while beneath the surface, your nervous system is screaming in pure terror.
You're faking it.
Exactly. You are pretending everything is fine while your cortisol levels are skyrocketing. That is delusion, and it does absolutely nothing for you.
I'd argue it actually makes it worse.
Yeah.
Right? Because you are adding suppression to your list of problems.
Precisely. What we are talking about is an entirely different mechanism. It relies on actually understanding causality.
Okay, break the mechanics of that causality down for us. Because I really think the listener needs the how here, not just the what.
Sure. Think about the biological and psychological nature of gratitude itself. Gratitude is the terminal emotion of receiving.
The terminal emotion, meaning it comes at the end.
Yes. It is the indirect implication that a transaction is completely finished.
Yep.
You do not feel genuine gratitude for a gift unless the gift is already physically in your hands.
Right. You say thank you when you get the thing.
Therefore, by intentionally generating the physiological state of gratitude for the outcome before it arrives, you are practically forcing your internal baseline into a state of completion.
Oh, I see.
You are stating to your nervous system, the threat is over, the goal is achieved.
So you're basically reverse engineering your own biology.
Exactly. You are overriding the ancient survival software of the brain. Because the universe, reality, the algorithm, whatever terminology you prefer, it does not process the English language.
It doesn't hear our words.
No. It processes your baseline state. If you broadcast the frequency of a desperate plea, crying out, please change my life, reality registers the underlying vibration, which is lack.
It registers a nervous system in distress.
And it mirrors that distress back with more chaotic circumstances. But if you downregulate your nervous system and intentionally cultivate profound gratitude, you broadcast a state of having already attained the outcome.
Okay, let's get incredibly practical here. How do you actually do that when your brain is literally screaming that you are in danger?
It's not easy.
Because I can't just decide to be grateful when I am panic. The biology simply doesn't allow it.
You are absolutely right. You cannot think your way out of a biological panic response. To convince the nervous system, you have to break the stress loop physically first. Yes, you literally have to sit down, look at the completely empty vault, and utilize physiological tools to lower your heart rate. Deep, rhythmic breathing, sighing, grounding the body.
So you have to calm the animal part of yourself first.
You must force the biology out of a fight-or-flight state before you can even attempt to assign a new mental framework to the situation.
So step one is literally shutting off the alarm bells. You can't install new software while the computer is actively on fire.
That's a great analogy, precisely. Once the alarm bells are silenced, you use your imaginative capacity, which, by the way, is the highest cognitive function we possess, to vividly construct the feeling of the desired outcome.
You manufacture the relief?
Yes, you generate the relief, and as you sustain that relief, the gratitude naturally follows. The gratitude acts as a magnetic command. You are no longer reacting to the external world, you are dictating the terms of engagement.
So when you allow your internal state to be dictated by the external darkness, you are basically a hostage to the illusion.
A total hostage.
But the true master dictates the internal state regardless of the external conditions, which forces the filtering mechanisms of the brain and subsequently the external conditions to eventually catch up.
Yes. They must feel the profound safety of their desired outcome right now in the midst of the total void, because the void is just a delay in the mirror.
A delay in the mirror, wow.
Yeah.
If reality is a delayed mirror, you basically have to stand there and hold the smile until the reflection eventually catches up and smiles back.
That's exactly how it works.
But man, it is agonizing holding that smile when the reflection is still scowling at you with a massive list of problems.
Which is precisely why the overwhelming majority of humanity lives in a perpetual state of reaction. It requires immense, almost uncomfortable internal discipline to maintain that baseline when the physical evidence contradicts it.
Okay, let's transition this into how we handle the things we do actually have.
Good pivot.
If gratitude is the frequency of having already received, we need to look really closely at how we perceive the fragments of resources we actually currently possess.
Yes, the resources right in front of us.
Because I think this is where the entire system short-circuits for the average person.
It absolutely does. And this brings us to the profound necessity of altering our perception. The concept of taking a solitary spark and perceiving it as a vast constellation.
The transition from perceiving scarcity to projecting overwhelming abundance.
Exactly. Our internal perception of what we currently hold in our hands directly equates to what we project and therefore what we materialize moving forward.
Okay, unpack the psychology there.
Well, the human mind is heavily conditioned by evolutionary biology to constantly scan for lack. We look at our resources and we immediately categorize them.
We ask, is this enough to survive?
Right. We see separation, we see limits, and we see impending depletion. But a higher unified understanding of reality completely transcends this illusion of limitation.
Because to the fundamental laws of reality, there is no real concept of big or small, right? Those are purely human judgments.
Entirely human judgments. Size, magnitude, quantity. These are interpretations applied by a brain that is completely obsessed with survival.
Right.
There is an ancient narrative that illustrates this beautifully. Imagine a massive gathering of people facing severe deprivation.
Okay, a crisis situation.
Exactly. They possess only a solitary, insignificant fragment of sustenance. The collective consciousness, the panicked survival brain of the crowd, looks at this meager fragment and immediately categorizes it as a disaster.
They assign it the absolute meaning of scarcity.
Yes, the rational mind calculates destruction and triggers mass panic. But an individual operating from a unified, non-dualistic baseline looks at the exact same solitary fragment and perceives an endless feast.
They don't see the lack at all.
This mind is completely devoid of the concept of lack. It looks at the fragment, downregulates the fear response, and gives profound thanks for the sheer existence of the abundance.
And then what happens?
Through that pure, uncorrupted baseline of abundance, the fragment somehow multiplies until the entire gathering is satisfied, leaving a vast constellation of remnants behind.
Okay, stripping away the historical narrative for a second, let's extrapolate this to a modern, tangible situation for our listeners.
Sure.
Let's say someone is trying to build an independent enterprise from scratch. They are pouring their absolute soul into it.
Working day and night.
Yes. And after a tremendous amount of time, they receive this tiny, almost insulting trickle of incoming resources.
A meager return.
Right, maybe a trivial return on a massive investment, or a single, highly demanding client who pays very little. The collective consciousness, their peers, their own anxiety, their societal conditioning, looks at that minor trickle and assigns it the meaning of absolute failure.
And the very moment they assign it the meaning of scarcity, they trigger the biological cascade of fear.
They look at that solitary spark of income and they think, this is not enough. I am still failing. I'm still miles away from survival.
Exactly. And what does that do practically and metaphysically?
You tell me.
It solidifies the lack. There are profound psychological studies detailing the effects of resource scarcity on the human brain.
Right, I've read some of those.
When an individual is fixated on what they lack, their cognitive bandwidth is entirely consumed by that lack. Their actual measurable intelligence drops.
Wow, literally making us less capable.
Yes, they make poor decisions, they miss obvious opportunities, and they alienate potential allies. They take the raw, neutral data of their reality and they forcefully stamp it with the frequency of failure.
So their own compromised actions ensure that reality continues to provide experiences that validate the failure.
They trap themselves in a self-fulfilling prophecy of diminishing returns.
So the alternative approach, this alchemical shift we're talking about, is to view that solitary spark with the exact same joy, safety, and freedom as if it were a massive, life-altering windfall.
Think about the magnitude of this idea. What if the very belief that something is missing is the exact mechanical lock preventing it from arriving?
The belief that something is missing is the lock on the door. If you believe it's missing, you act like it's missing, and your actions literally push it further away.
The universe does not understand your arbitrary financial goals or your desired social status. It only understands the baseline of your interpretation.
It just reads the room.
Exactly. If you receive a solitary spark of a resource and you interpret it with profound gratitude and a sense of overflowing wealth, your internal state broadcasts overflowing wealth.
And then your cognitive bandwidth opens up.
Yes, you start seeing opportunities you were previously entirely blind to.
This reminds me of the tinted lenses analogy. If reality is a mirror, You cannot stand before it scowling and wait for your reflection to smile first.
Right.
But it's also about the glasses you're wearing. If you are wearing the deeply tinted lenses of scarcity, even a massive life-changing opportunity will just look like a threat.
You will find a subconscious way to self-sabotage it because your internal architecture cannot support it.
You must drop the scarcity entirely so that abundance finds resonance.
You cannot attract a boundless fortune if your internal architecture is structurally designed to house poverty. The alchemist looks at the singular drop of water and feels the majesty of the entire ocean.
But practically speaking, how? I mean, let's say I am looking at a meager return on an exhausting effort. My brain is screaming that this is unfair.
Sure, that's natural.
How do I convince myself that it is an endless feast without feeling like I'm just playing make-believe in my living room?
By understanding that the physical manifestation you are looking at is just the trailing edge of a much larger energetic momentum.
The trailing edge.
Yes, that small return is reality knocking on your door, signaling, hey, the momentum is shifting. I am beginning to respond to your altered baseline.
Oh, wow.
If you open the door, look at the small return, and scoff, saying, is this it? This is pathetic?
You instantly sever the momentum. You literally slam the door in its face.
Because you went right back to the lack baseline.
Exactly. But if you open the door, see the small return, and celebrate it with the magnitude of a massive victory, you blow the door right off its hinges. You signal to your subconscious that this is the correct path.
And your subconscious ramps up its pattern recognition to find more of it.
So you treat the spark with the reverence of a roaring fire, and in doing so, you actually give it the oxygen it requires to become one.
Precisely. You consciously withdraw your participation from the illusion of scarcity. You refuse to let your mood be dictated by a temporary, incomplete manifestation.
I feel like this completely inverts the paradigm of how we live our daily lives. I mean, we are constantly evaluating things based on their immediate physical mass, rather than their trajectory or their potential.
We judge the seed for not already being a towering tree, instead of celebrating the entire forest that is encoded within that tiny seed.
Okay, so let's assume we manage to master this. We shift our perception from scarcity to boundless abundance.
We're doing the work.
Right. We utilize the physiological tools to downregulate our panic, and we actually feel immense gratitude before the fact.
Yes.
How does this alter the way we actually interact with the physical world on, like, a random Tuesday morning?
Ah, the daily application.
Because we still have to wake up and take action, right? We can't
Yeah.
just sit in an armchair radiating gratitude and expect a magnificent outcome to just crash through the living room ceiling.
No, absolutely not. That is the ultimate trap of misunderstanding this philosophy. And it brings us to a concept that is often incredibly difficult for the modern mind to grasp.
Which is
The paradox of effort.
the idea of action existing within inaction.
Yes. The reality that there is profound inaction hidden within frantic action, and massive world-altering action hidden within profound inaction.
Unravel that for us, because on the surface, that sounds like a contradiction designed to just confuse people. Inaction, inaction.
Think back to the listener we described at the very beginning of our conversation.
The one pushing the boulder.
Right. The person sending out the endless tide of effort, working themselves to the point of sheer exhaustion and yielding absolutely nothing. That is the very definition of frantic action.
Totally.
But structurally, fundamentally, it is profound inaction.
Why? Because their physical body is doing a massive amount of things. I mean, they are sending emails, making calls, building frameworks.
Because physical action is only as valuable as the internal state of consciousness that precedes it.
Okay.
The overwhelming majority of people operate entirely backward. They harbor an internal baseline of desperation, limitation, and deep-seated fear. They feel fundamentally inadequate.
So they are starting from a deficit.
Yes, and from that dark, heavy, constricted state, they take massive physical action to try and forcefully alter their reality.
I see. So their physical body is moving at blinding speed, but their internal engine is completely stalled.
The physical effort is entirely corrupted by the stagnant baseline. The vehicle is moving, but it is moving with the parking brake fully engaged.
That sounds exhausting.
It is. They are dragging a massive invisible weight behind them, the weight of their own desperation. That is why they are so utterly exhausted. They are not actually fighting the world. They are fighting the current of their own internal resistance.
So when I am frantically refreshing my inbox, waiting for an answer, or, aggressively trying to manipulate a social interaction to work in my favor,
Yes.
if I am doing those things because I am terrified of what happens if I fail, the action is actually pushing the outcome further away. The desperation repels the result.
This explains a universal phenomenon we have all witnessed, which defies logical explanation.
What's that?
Well, we all know individuals who aggressively push a boundless tide of effort, who sacrifice their health and their relationships for a goal and receive absolutely nothing in return.
Yeah, we all know someone like that.
And conversely, we know individuals who seemingly move with a quiet, effortless grace. They take minimal physical action, yet they attract serendipitous, life-altering opportunities at every turn.
Yes. The people where things just seem to effortlessly fall right into their lap. And honestly, it is incredibly infuriating to watch when you are the one grinding yourself into dust.
It is infuriating to the ego, which deeply believes suffering is a virtue. But mechanically, it is perfect logic. The individuals gliding effortlessly are prioritizing their state of being, which allows them to drastically reduce their doing.
Prioritizing being. Define that practically for us.
They have cultivated the internal baseline of completion we discussed earlier. They feel fundamentally abundant, they feel deeply secure, and they feel unified with their objective.
So they aren't needy.
Exactly. Because their internal state is aligned and completely devoid of resistance, every single minor action they take in the physical world is incredibly precise and supercharged.
It has weight to it.
Yes. They make one phone call, and it opens a massive door because the energy carrying that communication is pure, confident, and magnetic.
While the desperate person is doing the opposite.
The desperate individual makes 100 frantic phone calls, and all the doors remain bolted shut because the energy carrying the calls is needy, erratic, and repellent.
People can subconsciously smell desperation,
All right.
and they instinctively retreat from it.
Exactly.
Let's examine the trap of the collective consciousness here. Because modern society actively demands this frantic action.
It practically worships it.
We are swimming in this dense, invisible web governed by fear, the glorification of burnout, and the desperate need for external approval. Society tells us that if you aren't suffering for your goal, you simply don't deserve to achieve it.
The collective consciousness operates as a highly magnetic field of limitation. It actively demands conformity to struggle.
It wants you to bleed.
It demands that you bleed for your rewards because that justifies everyone else's suffering. If you succeed easily, it invalidates their pain.
And when you act from a desire to appease this collective energy, for instance, when you completely mold your personality to fit a rigid corporate expectation, or you chase a specific milestone just because it will validate you in the eyes of your peers, you become a prisoner of that dense web.
You are running on their treadmill.
Exactly.
Whenever your actions are dictated by the fear of what others will think or the need to prove your worth, you have completely surrendered your internal sovereignty.
You give your power away.
You are no longer the author of your reality. You are simply playing a supporting character in someone else's script. And that script is almost always a tragedy built on mediocrity and exhaustion.
So the diagnostic tool for the listener here is not to audit their calendar.
No, the calendar is irrelevant.
Do not look at your schedule and ask what you have been doing all week. Ask yourself, who have you been being while doing it?
That is the ultimate question. Who are you being?
Are you being the desperate, terrified seeker, constantly grasping at the external world?
Or are you being the calm, abundant receiver, moving with intention and trust?
Because if you are being the desperate seeker, you could optimize your productivity habits 24 hours a day, and reality will simply optimize the delivery of more desperation.
Exactly. The system is incredibly efficient. It scales whatever baseline you provide.
So let's navigate the inevitable complications.
Because there are always complications.
Let's say someone hears this, and they actually do the work. They downregulate their nervous system. They start operating from an aligned baseline, feeling profound gratitude and moving with effortless grace.
Okay.
What happens when those actions finally begin to yield massive results? Or, equally important, what happens when they face a dramatic, totally unexpected failure? Because life still happens. We do not exist in a vacuum.
This brings us to a critical threshold in mastery, where the majority of people actually lose everything they have just gained.
Really? When they win?
Yes. Once you begin to operate in alignment, you will experience sudden, massive movement. The pendulum of reality will begin to swing wildly, and we must discuss mastering the pendulum of experience.
The necessity of ultimate emotional equilibrium.
Yes. The realization that true wisdom requires maintaining an identical internal baseline regardless of external triumph or devastating defeat.
Okay, halt right there.
I know.
An identical internal baseline. Are you seriously telling me that if I achieve my life's greatest ambition tomorrow, or if I lose absolutely everything I own, I am supposed to feel exactly the same.
This sounds extreme.
Because I have to push back aggressively on this.
Mhm.
That does not sound like mastery to me. That sounds like emotional numbness.
It's a very common reaction to this idea.
If my house burns down, I am going to experience profound grief. Are you implying that feeling grief destroys your alignment? Because that sounds incredibly toxic.
Your pushback is entirely valid, and the distinction here is absolutely vital. I am not talking about emotional suppression at all.
Okay, good.
If a tragedy occurs, the biological and emotional response of grief is natural and entirely necessary. You feel the pain, you cry, you process the loss.
So where does the equilibrium come in?
The difference lies in where you anchor your identity and your foundational sense of safety. Let's explore the fundamental mechanics of the pendulum. Reality operates on a relentless swing. Everything breathes in and out, everything rises and falls, the tide comes in, the tide goes out. The passage of eras proves this continuous cycle.
It's the law of rhythm. Cycles are inevitable. Winter follows summer.
Exactly. Now, observe what happens psychologically when you allow yourself to become completely intoxicated by a magnificent victory.
When you win big.
Right. You achieve the goal, you celebrate wildly, your ego inflates, and you decide, finally I am happy, finally I am safe. What have you actually done in that moment?
I've attached my happiness to the fact that I won.
Mechanically, you have unconsciously built a deep emotional dependence on an external variable. You have declared to your nervous system, my internal stability is entirely dictated by this specific external condition.
Which is dangerous, because that condition can change.
You have handed the keys of your internal kingdom over to an illusionary, temporary world. And biologically, you have spiked your dopamine to a completely unsustainable level.
Dopamine dynamics. What goes up must come down.
Always.
If I tie my baseline to the massive spike of the victory, the law of rhythm and my own neurobiology dictates that a crash is completely imminent.
The higher you ride the pendulum into ecstatic, ego-driven joy over a physical manifestation, the harder you will be crushed when the tide inevitably recedes.
You set yourself up for the fall.
If your entire sense of worth is tied to the arrival of the boundless fortune, you will be utterly destroyed when a natural cycle of loss occurs. You become a helpless prisoner to the swing.
You are basically a hostage to the weather.
That's it.
I want to offer an analogy here. The common human experience is kind of like being a single leaf on a massive tree.
I like this.
When the wind blows favorably, you flutter and dance, feeling joyous. But when a violent storm comes, you are blown erratically, completely terrified of being ripped apart. You are entirely at the mercy of the winds of circumstance.
Beautifully said.
But mastering the pendulum means you stop identifying as the leaf, and you become the sky itself. The sky is vast. It is untouched.
It holds everything.
Right. It intimately observes the hurricane, and it intimately observes the sunny day, but the sky itself is never fundamentally altered by the weather passing through it.
That is a brilliant encapsulation. Feeling the emotion is observing the weather. Letting the emotion dictate your foundational sense of self is believing you are the leaf.
So treating immense profit and devastating loss as equally temporary phenomena strips the external world of its power to destroy you.
Exactly.
But practically, how do we navigate a massive win without inflating the ego? Let's say a massive, life-altering opportunity lands for our listener. They have been visualizing it, doing the internal work, and boom, it hits. How should they react?
They can absolutely experience the joy, but they must actively prevent it from altering their foundational baseline. They must not say, now I am finally complete.
Because that phrasing implies they were broken and incomplete yesterday.
Exactly. They must observe the magnificent victory and quietly say, of course, this is simply the natural reflection of my internal state.
Wow, of course.
There's a quiet, grounded nod of acknowledgement rather than a frantic burst of intoxication.
Of course. That is such an incredibly powerful phrase. It totally neutralizes the hype. It treats the absolute miracle as just the expected baseline.
And the true power of that phrase is revealed in the dark.
When things go wrong.
Yes. When you can treat a sudden loss or a terrifying setback with the exact same quiet, of course, you completely neutralize the devastation.
You just accept the swing.
When a setback occurs, the unmoving center simply observes it and says, the pendulum swings, the weather changes. But my internal architecture remains absolute.
And when you do this, the physical realm just loses all its leverage over your nervous system.
It has nothing to push against.
And when reality realizes it can no longer control your nervous system, it surrenders the fight.
Reality is a continuous feedback loop, presenting stimuli to gauge your reaction. If you do not react, if you maintain the unmoving center and refuse to panic, The chaotic stimuli eventually cease.
And reality reorganizes itself to align with your profound equilibrium. Which brings us to the ultimate question. Achieving this unshakable equilibrium, becoming the vast, untouched sky, requires mastering the final and arguably the most terrifying state of the human mind.
The absolute command of stillness.
The core assertion here is honestly breathtaking in its scope. It says, to the mind that is perfectly still, the entirety of the universe completely surrenders.
This is the true apex of human mastery.
The mind and the external universe are intimately, inextricably bound.
They are mirrors of one another. We experience continuous chaos in our external affairs solely because we are actively ignoring the profound disharmony echoing within our own minds.
Let's examine the modern epidemic of distraction through this lens, because people are constantly, desperately seeking external noise.
Always. Endless streams of media.
Frantic social interactions, working until their eyes literally bleed, keeping music or the TV playing every single second of the day.
All of this is engineered to avoid facing their internal environment.
And why do we do it? Why are we so afraid?
Because we are terrified of the internal mirror. When you close your eyes, eliminate all external stimuli, and sit in absolute stillness, whatever you have been chronically suppressing immediately rises to the surface.
The deep-seated anxieties.
The terrifying fears, the feelings of absolute inadequacy. The noise of the modern world is not a pursuit of entertainment. It is a collective, desperate coping mechanism to avoid the silence.
We are perpetually running away from ourselves.
Yes.
But by running, we are basically projecting all that unhealed internal chaos directly onto the canvas of the external world, ensuring our lives remain chaotic.
The universe is simply a boundless canvas reflecting our exact conception of it. If an individual harbors a deep, unexamined belief that the overarching forces of reality are vindictive, punishing, or rooted in scarcity,
then reality has no choice but to bend to execute that exact vision.
Exactly.
We are the ultimate authors of our own limitations. If I subconsciously believe that life is this brutal, agonizing struggle, reality says, your baseline is my command, and proceeds to hand me struggle after struggle to validate my belief.
And the tragedy is, you will point to those very struggles as empirical evidence that your cynical worldview is correct.
You'll say, see, I told you life was hard.
You become both the thinker of the thought and the ultimate prover of its reality.
So, mechanically speaking, how does stillness break this self-destructive loop?
Immersing oneself in absolute stillness is the highest form of neurological and metaphysical reset. When you first attempt to sit in absolute silence, the chaos initially screams at you.
Oh yeah, the urge to check your phone is wild.
The physical urge to check a device, to move your body, to ruminate on tomorrow's problems, it becomes almost physically unbearable.
The ego fights violently for its survival. It literally needs the noise and the problems to justify its own existence.
Precisely, but the technique is to refuse to look away. You sit in the stillness, and you simply observe the internal chaos without judgment.
Without reacting.
Without reaction and without trying to fix it. You just watch the thoughts pass like storm clouds.
And what does that accomplish?
By refusing to engage, the chaos eventually exhausts its own energy supply. It just dissolves. And beneath those turbulent, terrifying waves of the mind, you discover an ocean of profound, unfathomable serenity that has actually always been there.
And because the internal state and the external world are perfectly linked mirrors?
When the internal realm becomes genuinely serene, the external universe has no choice but to reorganize itself and align in perfect harmony.
It must reflect the stillness.
It must reflect the absolute clarity. The massive obstacles melt away, not because you forcefully push them with physical effort, but because the internal frequency that originally created them no longer exists within your architecture.
This is the absolute crux of the entire philosophy. We all want the universe to surrender to us. We all want the seas to part, the massive doors to open, the fortunes to manifest without friction.
Everyone wants that.
But are you actually willing to surrender the noise of your own mind first?
Yeah.
Because that is the non-negotiable entry fee.
And the overwhelming majority are simply not willing. They want the rewards of the master while desperately clinging to the habits of the prisoner.
They demand a completely frictionless external world while stubbornly maintaining a chaotic, fear-driven internal world.
It violates the fundamental laws of cause and effect.
It's the equivalent of demanding a mirror to reflect a calm, beautiful landscape while you're standing in front of it holding up a photograph of a hurricane.
Yeah.
It simply does not work.
This raises a really profound diagnostic question for anyone listening who feels completely overwhelmed by their circumstances right now.
Let's hear it.
Where are you projecting your power? Are you constantly giving it away to the external world, reacting to every piece of bad news, or are you aggressively returning it to the unmoving center within yourself?
That is a question to sit with. I think we need to synthesize this entire journey for a moment.
It's been a lot of ground covered.
We have traveled from recognizing the illusion of the dark void and utilizing the biological power of preemptive gratitude.
We discussed the alchemy of taking a solitary spark and expanding it into boundless abundance by shifting our cognitive filters.
We unraveled the paradox of effort, understanding that frantic action from a place of fear is actually profound inaction.
We explored the danger of the pendulum and the necessity of neutralizing both hype and devastation with the phrase, of course.
And finally, the terrifying absolute power of facing your own stillness. Let's bring this all together into a broader reflection on what human beings are actually capable of.
When we synthesize these mechanics, the magnitude of what we are discussing is truly staggering. We possess an internal architecture that is entirely unified with the infinite potential of existence.
We are so much more powerful than we realize.
The capacity of a human being is not merely to survive the labyrinth of physical existence. We are not meant to be frantic rats in a maze, hopelessly sniffing for cheese, bumping into walls, and letting the maze dictate our emotional state.
Right. We are not meant to just develop better coping mechanisms for a brutal reality.
We possess the capacity to design the maze entirely from the inside out.
To be the architect.
When you intentionally align your gratitude, when you rewrite your perception to see boundless abundance in a solitary spark, when you act from a baseline of wholeness rather than desperation, and when you endure the discomfort of mastering the stillness of your own mind,
Reality shifts.
reality loses its density, it becomes clay in your hands, you transition permanently from being the victim of circumstance to being the architect of your own existence.
It is the ultimate reclamation of human sovereignty. You finally stop trying to force the heavy boulder up the sheer cliff with your bare, exhausted hands, and you learn to alter the gravity of the hill itself.
The truth is, the keys have always been in our pockets. The outer world is strictly the realm of effects. The inner world is the absolute realm of causes.
And if you wish to permanently change the effect.
You must possess the courage to return to the cause.
So as we conclude this exploration, I want to leave you, the listener, with a lingering, profound thought. We started this entire conversation talking about the sheer exhaustion of relentless effort, the deep frustration of pushing against an unyielding, silent reality.
The struggle.
Right. We have spent this time unraveling the mechanical truth that the overarching universe is nothing more than a perfect, unflinching mirror of your internal baseline.
It reflects the absolute totality of who you are being, not what you are doing.
So if the overarching force of reality reflects exactly what you assume it to be, and you are simultaneously both the thinker of the thought and the ultimate prover of its reality, what grand, limiting illusion are you unconsciously choosing to prove right at this very moment?